I'm excited to be here, man. I feel like I'm hanging out with the big boys right now. So I'm just trying my hardest, man. And so I'm happy to be here and I'm excited to get into it with you. Man, this book is first of all, writing a book is hard, folks. I've been saying lately, if you love somebody, don't let them write a book. That's negative. No, it's an important thing, maybe the most important thing in my life, and it's about decision making. Basically, how we come to decide how we will spend our time. And so I believe, yep, back.
So sorry about that, guys. Looks like there was something wonky going on with my audio. Anyway, sorry, Logan. Please continue. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries, man. Essentially, the book's about decision making, and the book can be applied to any decision making. But essentially, what do we what do we worry about? It's like the big decisions in our lives, basically how we spend our time, relationships, your career, your lifestyle. And the book was written because of an observation that really troubles me every day, actually, and that is this notion that by and large, most people are living this very optimal, low performance expression of themselves. And that's a sad thing to observe. I think the only thing more sad than people giving up on their best self is the same people rationalizing that and deciding in their head that not only are they going to give up on their dreams, so to speak, they are being more reasonable when they do so. And so the book starts with this problem, this recognition of a problem that most of our population is doing this, and they're justifying it as the better decision. And the book sort of creates a spectrum. And this is a sort of a broken decision-making model that I think many of us are subscribing to, which is that on one end you have the things that would make for the best version of you, the best expression of your life. Again, the easy way to say it is like your dreams, your optimal direction. And there is a very strong, I believe, emotional connection to this. It's like when you're a kid and you wanted to be a shortstop or an astronaut or a president or something, an artist, something that really spoke to you. Ninja. The black wardrobe, the shiny sword. I'm with you. I can get on board with the ninja deal. Is a very emotional connection, and we have a lot of emotional reasons for doing so. It's the metaphorical pep rally, right? You watch the inspirational movie and you want to go for it. And then something happens along the way that becomes more logical. And we start to look at the fear associated with this, the uncertainty that shows up, and we start to hedge our risk, so to speak, right? And it feels scary to actually be vulnerable and go for these things. So what we do is we rationalize giving up this. And that's the other end of the spectrum, which looks like self-sacrifice, conceding what you'd really like to do, express your life with, and it feels more heady, right? And that we're being more responsible. And so, because I was just so tired of that, and it made me so sad to see a population of people continually doing this, that I decided to write a book that didn't address any of the emotional reasons for pursuing your peak expression, but rather was an objective, logical justification for doing so. And essentially, at the end of the experience of reading this book, you have a mathematical advantage. What you are presented with is a mathematical advantage to pursuing your best self. And it removes the false logic that we subscribe to that allows us to feel good about giving up on our best life. And so you'll read the book and immediately feel like the mirror is back in your face and you are back on the hook. Surely you can still opt to concede your best life, your best expression, but you could no longer tell me that you were smarter for having done so. And so what we know is that there is greater utility, measurable utility to yourself and your community when you pursue your peak expression. And it's important to me. So
I think it's important to all of us, man. It's at the core of where I think a lot of us are, sometimes tuned out and missing the opportunity to really enjoy this life for what it can be. And I'm really personally eager to read the book when it comes out. I know that's going to be coming up here in the near future. And you also hold the standard summits,
sure did.
Which I know several people who've attended who it absolutely blew their mind, and they had nothing but incredible things to say. Even people who work with us, Abby and her husband Jeremy, who I know you're very close with, they rave about it, man. And you've got one coming up, I think, March 3rd and 4th in Venice, right?
Yeah, that's the first time the summit has happened in the U.S. So basically this has started overseas, done several in Spain. We've been to Australia. And so this is sort of like the homecoming party. And essentially it's just it's a weekend for leaders and what that looks like, and business owners. And what that looks like is not what you think. Surprise, surprise, right? So it is a place for people to understand their organization on a deeper level, to understand what leadership is on a deeper level, to evolve essentially their company, their organization. And that too often looks like people wanting to come in because they are the charismatic, badass leader in their community, and if only they could get the rest of their team up to their level, right, they would be just fine. And what they come to realize in the summit is that they are the problem, and so there are specific sort of diagnostic skills that we put people through, and evolutions and lectures that help people understand, well, there's a progression here. Organizationally, there's a progression of how people work together, essentially, and we can find out where you are in that progression. And, I think the academics would like to say that, no stage is necessarily bad, right? And that's just where you are, and that's true. And there's some things to gain from that and some observations to make outside of that. But as a high-performance individual with high-performance interests, there are very specific advantages to committing to an evolution. And that's what we're eventually going to talk about today, like on a super general level. It pays to be able to hold more space, have more capacity, perspective. And this summit is like a fitness, usually flavored business version of that conversation. And it's cool. And obviously I'm biased, but it is a very powerful weekend that I think will be a call to action to people that I think are sort of just going through the motions. Most people that I observe in the fitness industry aren't good at what they do. And part of that is because they've put the passion for the thing, the barbell and the push-ups and the pull-ups, on such a pedestal that they've relinquished the responsibility of leadership and the fact that they are in business, and so that's what goes down over the weekend. Yeah.
Love it, man. Well, I'm looking forward to making it out myself here as soon as possible. So that said, let's dig right in, man. So what we're going to be discussing today is going to be deliberate practice, right? As you said, the most utilitarian strategy for achieving mastery in pretty much anything, right?
Yeah.
Why should a gym owner business owner, small business owner care about this subject?
That's a to start. Basically, and behind the curtain, I'd like to take you even one further step back, because we could have talked about anything today, and I think really helped a lot of people out. I specifically wanted to talk about deliberate practice because it's such a foundational, helpful tool that will speak to a lot of other things as well. And so this will start with deliberate practice, but it will have almost universal application. Like the sentence you just said is perfectly true. And how do we know this? Well, deliberate practice is not my idea. This is something that has been cultivated in the academic world. And I don't want that to turn people off immediately, because how these academics, specifically a guy by the name of Anders Ericsson, who coined the term deliberate practice, you can go down that rabbit hole of his research if you'd like, got to this point of naming a thing deliberate practice through observations of people who are the best in the world at what they do. So what came first was the performance. What came second was our observation of this thing and naming it, right? And so that's critical, especially for people who are in gyms, right? It's like the snatch and the clean and jerk are not. It's not like a Mr. Snatch and Mr. Clean and Jerk who wrote a book about what they wanted to see happen. That's not how it happened. Yeah, that's right. First came the task. Pick this thing up from the ground, put it over your head. The heaviest weight wins. Over time, we found out what are the best practices there. This is the same way we arrive at deliberate practice. And deliberate practice, I'll sort of summarize quickly, and then we'll get into the implications of this, is by definition the most effective way to develop skill in anything. And so if you understand what I'm saying right now, you can apply this in your gym or your training or your chess or anything. And that is critical, I think, to say straight away. To be inside of deliberate practice, we need a couple things to be true. The first of which is that you must have a clear stretch goal. So the thing that you are in practice of must have a clearly defined goal. And anybody who's done basic ass goal setting knows that that's important, right? Your goal needs to be this objective thing that's very clear. Awesome. But the key word there for me in this first part is the stretch part. So by definition, to be in deliberate practice, you must be practicing something that is currently slightly beyond your capacity, right? And that is inherently difficult, and that's going to inherently bring upon failures and discomfort. That's the starting line for this thing. Mm-hmm. Second thing is the environment must provide immediate informative feedback. Okay, so you need to, on a moment-by-moment basis, be getting information about your progress, good, bad, etc. Am I off? How far am I off? Is it to the left? Is it to the right? Am I short? Am I long? Okay, I use the example all the time of like a basketball hoop. I'm a horrible basketball player. In 7th grade was the last time I played basketball, and in that season I scored 2 points. This is for the fact checkers back home. 2 points in the season, and they were free throws in different games. Okay, so I'm not good at basketball. So let's take my example. If we set up a basketball hoop right here in front of me, so I'm at this table, if we put a basketball hoop right here in my lap, and I had an infinite amount of basketballs, the goal is for the ball to go in the hoop. Clear goal. But it's not a stretch of my capacity. Even as a horrible basketball player, I'm literally just dropping these balls in the hoop. To stretch my capacity, we wouldn't have to necessarily move the basket very far, though. When we put it on the other end of the room, the goal is clear, but it's also stretching my ability because I'm a horrible shot, right? And so inside of practice, I also need not just this clear stretch goal, but immediate informative feedback. And so as long as I can see the basket and I can feel the experience of shooting the basket balls into this hoop, I'm getting feedback immediately. After my first shot, it's a little short, right? And so the opportunity that I have now with this immediate informative feedback is to make an adjustment on the next rep, right? And I can shoot it a little bit longer, etc. Now you can imagine if I was in this environment and I all of a sudden blindfolded myself, right? It would remove that important feedback. And this example is silly, but you need to understand the principles of deliberate practice if you're going to apply it in the granular, complex places that you would probably apply it in your business, right? Mm-hmm. The third thing that is required of deliberate practice is the repetition, and that's something that we know really well. This is not a surprise to us. But the first 2 points are the ones that we need to continually come back to make sure that we understand. Clear stretch goal. So it's not, the practice does not count for high performance individuals if it's easy. Okay. Second thing is this immediate informative feedback. And the thing I would like to say about this is deliberate practice not only is our tool for pursuing mastery, continual improvement, it's also an insurance policy, is the language that we like to use at Deuce Gym. It's our insurance policy against stagnation or autopilot, right? An example I talk about all the time is driving. Okay, this autopilot phenomenon when we learn a skill is, in our evolution, it's really important. Okay, so let's talk about driving. For you, 2017, how much better did you get at driving?
Probably not at all.
Probably not at all.
I'm not paying attention at all. You just check in, check out.
I would venture to bet you got worse. At best, you were the same. Yeah, and the same is true for me. And I'm bringing this up to make a clear point. The goal for you was not to get better in 2017 at driving. Right. It's actually very helpful that you can fall into this autopilot zone because you get from point A to point B, right? And that's good. If you had the type of focus and white knuckles on the steering wheel that you had in the first week of driving everywhere you went, by the time you got to work or whatever, you'd be like exhausted, right? It's helpful that it's an autopilot. The problem is when we fall into this trap of autopilot stagnation of skill development in things that we want to be great at, right? Okay, so hypothetically speaking, you've been coaching CrossFit for 6 years and you're just taking a group of people through an hour, making sure nobody catches on fire. I would venture to bet that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of CrossFit coaches that are, interestingly enough, not getting better because the environment that they're in, the 7 a.m. class, is no longer a stimulus that subscribes to deliberate practice, right? We got good enough at the thing to kind of chill. And for us, that's sort of like a dangerous observation that we can all sort of fall into this autopilot thing. And we are extremely uninterested in living in autopilot with a craft like, let's say, coaching or leadership, for example. And so if you understand what I just said about deliberate practice, clear stretch goal, immediate informative feedback, repetition, then you can artificially create environments that will stimulate growth forever. Right? And that is, I cannot overemphasize how important that is to anybody who claims to want to be excellent at something, right? This is critical. And, we all understand this, I think, on a training level. We need to have that relative stress to drive development everywhere in our lives. If you have a, 500-pound back squat, 1 rep max, there's not a rep scheme or amount of volume of 135-pound back squats that is going to grow your capacity with that 1 rep max, right? It is too close to the center of your comfort zone for that to happen. And so if you look at the definition of deliberate practice, it really informs you as to how to grow that thing. And I think we know that on a training level, but we're not really, this isn't showing up in our other capacities and the things that we claim that we want mastery in. Mm-hmm. And so there are implications with this, right? Now that you have like the definition of deliberate practice, and the implications get into like some of the cultural things that people like to talk about with Deuce or ask me about in terms of like leadership. And one is maybe not as straightforward as it might seem, but immediate informative feedback. Well, since we're not shooting hoops anymore and we're dealing with people and leadership and muddy ideas like this, immediate informative feedback sounds like not a bunch of compliments,
Right.
right? It sounds like you're going to be getting information often about what's true. And I am highly interested in what is true. As an organization, we have to be highly interested in what is true. And what that means is no longer subscribing to this regressive, socially reinforced basic shit that is like, if I want to give you some feedback, then I got to first compliment your outfit and then tell you to show up to class on time and then leave you on your way with another beautiful compliment so that you're buttered up to hear the thing that I really want to tell you, right? And I'm not a sports fan or whatever, but the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. People are either hearing that and they're pissed or they're excited. I just happened to hear that they won the Super Bowl. Do you think that an organization like the Philadelphia Eagles, who allegedly are the best in the world at what they do right now, operate on that same critique, compliment sandwich? Or are they interested in immediate action to find out what is true to move the needle towards the organization's goals? Mm-hmm. And I have to believe it's the latter, right? It's, hey, you missed your point, you got 23, whatever the thing is, right? Run your route. It's a button hook, whatever. It's straight to the point. I'm not concerned with making sure that you feel good about your outfit, and it's direct, actionable feedback. And in that environment, it makes sense. None of us really balk at that because it's like this ruthless team environment. But isn't that what we're all trying to do, right? I mean, in business, aren't we all trying to win, be the best in the world at what you're doing? But yet our behavior doesn't match what the people who are best in the world at what they do on a daily basis.
Right.
And so deliberate practice, going back to this framework, gives us a little toolkit to inform how to go about doing that. And, examples wise, this is how we structure coaches prep. So we view our business at Deuce Gym as we are a business in the scope of fitness, right? We make money by providing a place for people to learn how to move. That's like what the point of the business is. If we were an auto repair shop, we'd be fixing cars. If we were a barber, it'd be cutting hair. But that's half of the deal. The other half of our deal is developing people. There's this overarching burden of responsibility that we feel that I have to be a different dude next year. I have to be capable of more. I have to be able to hold more space and have greater perspective next year than I do this year. And that's true of everybody on the team, including our ability to develop coaches. And coaches prep is our answer to that. And this is the secret, how I go about planning the coaches prep practical. This is like one part of the program, which we don't necessarily have to go all the way into that, but there's a practical where all the coaches and all the coaches in training meet in a classroom on Saturday mornings. And how we design those drills must subscribe to deliberate practice principles, or the people who have been a professional coach for 9 years are just chilling. They already know the answers. They are just they're marking time. Maybe they're being like a mentor, sort of, but that's a waste of their time. We need to create an environment that is perfectly stressful for everybody in the room, right? And we do that artificially. We make a drill or an environment that artificially subscribes to deliberate practice principles so that we can get good forever. And if that feels like a lot and it feels like, this is like all going over my head, isn't that what great scaling is, right? You're in a room full of a bunch of different people and you have a prescribed workout for the day. Your job as a coach, and this is something that you all are doing every single day, is to create an environment for the person in front of you to feel the relative stimulus, the relative stress, to drive whatever adaptation was in the programming for that day. That's what it is. Why wouldn't we continue that process for development of coaches or leadership or anything else?
Because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you're saying this, I keep thinking of different, situations or environments I've been in where I've either embraced it, or more often than not, I think we have avoided it, where you're like, man, I know it's like in the back of your head, this direct feedback would be really good, but it's been a long day or it's been a long week or whatever justification we have, you kind of hold yourself back from that exposure. But really what you're doing is you're keeping yourself from progressing at all. And,
Yeah.
it's, anyway, so what I wanted to ask was could you give us some examples of maybe how you either apply this from a business standpoint with Deuce, or how, something that you guys have done that a gym owner listening to this or watching this can kind of apply or get a even more tangible example?
For sure. So I'll speak about it generally, and then I'll try to give you some specific answers. So for starters, there's a certain mindset that would really buy into and, let's say, extract the most amount of benefit from something like deliberate practice. And there's another researcher who thankfully has done the work for us in a lot of ways here, and that's Carol Dweck. And there's the only book that you have to read to be a part of Coach's Prep is her book, Mindset. And she's coined two different perspectives, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And essentially we can distill this down into how you navigate the feedback that you get in the world. And a growth mindset individual begins from a place that believes that our traits, the things that make us who we are generally malleable traits, that we can improve them and they can degrade. And that seems obvious, but the opposing mindset, the fixed mindset, believes that these traits are more set in stone. A fixed mindset version of myself would believe something like, I am an artistic inclined individual, but I'm not very athletic. I don't speak well in front of groups, and I'm generally shy. And these are all things that I can't really move the needle on. A growth mindset individual would selfishly, in a good way, look at feedback, specifically negative feedback, as useful information. It's basically like the recipe to improvement. Whereas a fixed mindset individual would hear negative feedback as a reflection of their unchangeable self. So if you tell me that, hey man, you're a little shy, I don't know, like, if you should be speaking in front of people a bunch. If I had a fixed mindset, I would hear that as bad news, because I can't do anything to change the truth that you just said about me. And so I need to do a couple things. I need to deflect that because it doesn't feel good, or I need to make you wrong, or make you an asshole, or something like this. And we see this behavior all around. Well, we want to ram home a culture that embraces negative feedback. Because if negative feedback is going to be one of these massive tenets to how we're going to get better forever, and two, it's literally going to allow us to speak truth rather than some sort of gilded lie here, we need individuals who are ready and willing to hear that. And so this growth mindset would allow for the highest level performance attitude for this thing. And so you get whacked over the head with that right away. Right? This is a place where we're going to make it extremely cool to speak truth, including negative feedback. And so you see a lot of honesty happening. And this makes people uncomfortable, I think, from a distance. But I think up close, how it actually plays out is that you have a culture and a group of individuals who are more open than ever. Right? It removes this like unspoken weirdness, if everyone involved is willing to hear that. And so that is a cultural thing that we sort of lay over the top, is we have to make it extremely sexy and normalized to give negative feedback. And it starts with the leadership, right? It starts with the staff, and then it trickles down to the Coach's Prep program, and so on and so forth. In specific practice, there are drills that we create all over the place. So, for example, this is the one that I mention often, but Coach's Prep. The lesson for the day was progression and simple, clear, compelling communication. That was the lesson. how was I going to design something that would drive that home for everybody, including people who have been coaching CrossFit for 10 years and people who have never coached before in their lives? Well, we're going to teach the rope climb today. And the progression was going to be given to you. So if you were brand new, you could wake up that morning not even knowing how to climb a rope, let alone teach it. The progression is there for you, and it's several steps long. You didn't have to come up with that. The deliberate practice part came in where you had to offer a message to your athlete in 10 words or less that would elicit movement, elicit a response. And so basically it forced people to slow down and to really introspect and think about what is going to come out of their mouth before they start talking. Why are we doing this? Because most amateur coaches talk too much. We use fake language all the time where we fill the gaps. We don't know what to say with and but and fake language like that. And so when we make a game, an artificial environment where you're going to teach something that is generally difficult to teach, and you are going to be held accountable to this 10 words to action rule, then the drill is harder than real life immediately. And you have to sit inside of the challenge there. And it is extremely stressful. Like I find myself, I would call myself an experienced coach. It's very stressful drill for me to do. It's very stressful for everybody else on the team to do, but relatively stressful. And the immediate informative feedback was literally a group of observers counting your words. So you had an athlete who you're coaching, and you're inside of this drill, and you start running your mouth, and no, 13, start over. 14 words, start over, right? And so it is a ruthless environment, but it is one that we've cultivated that we're all in agreement is the best environment for us to be in as an organization. Mm-hmm. Because why? We all want to be the best, right? We all want to be the best expression of this gym and of ourselves as we possibly can. And so it's easier than you think to get behind the idea that you could speak truth to someone and you could give them negative feedback if you're all on the same page, moving towards the same purpose. Sure. That's much more difficult to do in an organization where there's less purpose and less like shared values. Mm-hmm. Luckily we're in fitness, right? There's nobody on your staff that's like, I don't even know, dude, like I'm gonna go have a cigarette and I'll be back later, and they're like late. It's just a different environment. I think it's an easier one. It's not easy, but it's an easier one than some other work environments to practice these things.
Sure. Yeah. Very good, man. Well, I want to open this thing up for Q&A. So if you're watching this thing live, go ahead and start firing questions off in the comments here below. There's usually like a minute or two delay. So if it takes us a second to address it, don't sweat it. We'll get to it. So yeah, man, this whole concept, I mean, being deliberate and creating an environment where, like you said, I think the keyword was normalizing this kind of feedback, so that you don't feel like when it's you've okayed it for everyone to feel the feelings that you get when you're feeling vulnerable and you're accepting this kind of feedback. It's only going to unify you guys that much stronger. Anytime I've been in an environment like masterminds where it forces you to be completely honest, take direct critique and feedback, because we're all here to grow. We're all here to help each other. It's insane how much you can progress in a very short period of time. And if you make that part of just how you do business and how you interact with your staff, and then how that trickles down into how you interact with members, it can really set you apart, which I think you guys have done a fabulous job of with Deuce. Anytime I've been up there and I've watched classes being coached, or, we've talked about what you guys do and your philosophy, I'm always blown away with just how big the picture is for everybody there and how tuned in everybody is. And it just feels like an environment where everyone is trying to grow and get better, which ultimately I think for pretty much every gym owner listening to this thing is the root of what we're trying to accomplish every single day. So we want an environment where we're trying to progress and make people better. And I want to be a better coach. I want to help people achieve better fitness and happiness and longevity in life and all these things. And it all can boil back down to this simple concept, and just taking a break and saying, okay, well, how can I apply this in maybe just one or two aspects first and start to see the ROI. And ultimately, I think it's a practice thing where as you start to see how this affects what you're working on, you immediately want to start applying it everywhere, right? It's like any new like life skill, because in my personal opinion, becoming a great business owner or entrepreneur is really just becoming a better person and understanding how people operate and being willing to work on yourself and take feedback and being honest with yourself about what am I pretty good at now and what am I not that great at right now. And either way, zooming out and being able to say, okay, well, either way, I want to get better at all of it. So I'm open to any and all feedback, and I need to put myself in positions where I'm going to be challenged constantly so that I can keep progressing, because it's the only way I'm going to really get to where I want to go. So,
Totally.
Anyway, so if you got any questions, fire them in. And by the way, if you're watching this after the fact, put your questions into the comments here. Either way, tag Logan, tag myself. That's what this is all about. We know not everyone can make it in real time, but we'll answer them after the fact as well. But in the meantime, where can people learn more about you and your Hold the Standard Summits and just get more Logan?
Yeah, so the website for the gym has a blog every day that I think is meaningful. Like the blog today, for example, has nothing to do with fitness, but it's a 2-minute read and will definitely inspire some development between your ears. So that's DeuceGym.com, DEUCE, gym.com. And all of the educational stuff, so Coaches Prep 101. If you don't live in California, or you're not going to salute the flag with us over here in Venice, you can take Coaches Prep online, and it's a very powerful program, and I don't think there's anything like it. You can find that at prep.deucegym.com, and that's where you can also sign up for the summits. There will be more, but the March one is filling up. If you're interested in that, based on it's nearly full, so we want to be critical about like who's showing up to that. Send an email to seminar@deucegym.com, and we have some questions for you, basically to see where your head's at, where your organization is, and see if you can sort of bring something compelling to the conversation. I'm excited to announce that my coach is going to be a guest speaker at the summit, which is a huge deal. And she's Dr. Kara Miller, just rock star, level 20 rock star. She was a professor of mine in college. We've been friends ever since. She's been my coach through like the book writing process, and developmentally there's no one on that level. Basically, no one, including myself, can afford literally the price of admission on that. So she's going to be just dropping knowledge and a guest lecture. So that's exciting.
Love it. Yeah, man. Like I said, I'm hoping to get out there myself and check that out. I'd love to meet her and see what she's all about.
Yeah.
Question from Drew Girton, is actually a member of our team. Do you believe in firing staff, or was that an error on the owner for not doing a better job of developing them or hiring the right staff?
Absolutely. I believe in firing staff. Here's how I'll answer that, because there is a developmental, in my opinion, a developmental view of that. And this actually goes back to the blog that is up there today. So, on one hand, you are not responsible for, and you cannot control the behavior, beliefs, and actions and feelings of another person. You can't. That is their responsibility, 1,000%. And so on one hand, you could say that, well, this person is not capable, therefore I will fire them, and they're unsavable, we'll say. On the other hand, it definitely pays to believe that life isn't so deterministic, right? And that you could be better as a leader, and should view a circumstance where you have to fire somebody as a time to reflect on, how can I do this better? Clearly there's some feedback inside of this experience that is reflective upon you as a leader and what you can do better. So it pays to have the view that you can take full responsibility for someone else. So get the lessons, get that information out. But the really advanced mind would be able to hold both of those truths at the same time, right? And be able to disassociate and say, look, this individual is not capable of operating at the level that we need. Therefore, he or she will be removed from the organization. And I need to get better from this, is the way to approach it, in my opinion.
I love it. Yeah, I think oftentimes we can I see both sides in talking to gym owners, where they're either, they take no ownership over the mistake. Yeah, they totally screwed up. They can't get their head out of their ass, basically put it all on the person, and take no ownership over their part in what happened. And then I see the opposite, where people will take all of it on themselves and not understand that, look, this person at the end of the day is also making their own decisions, and it's prioritization, it's whatever is going on in their life. And like you said, it's I think a mix between the two, where you've got to be able to say, like, look, I understand this, it's your life, your decisions, and what you're going to do, but take it as an opportunity to say, well, at the end of the day, I am in charge. I am the one making the decisions in regards to maybe how we onboarded you, or how much information I get, or how often did I check in on you, where you can then audit yourself and see, well, what can I do better ultimately?
Totally. And, I think the guiding light in all of this stuff, even the deliberate practice stuff that we talked about, is performance. Like, thankfully, right? At the end of the day, we are interested in the highest performing behaviors, right? And so the deliberate practice sort of environment, protocol, or whatever, we're not talking about it because it's like my opinion, or like I tend to like it, right? It's the current best way to do this. And I'm interested in that not being true as well. I'm interested in breaking that game. And so if you're guided by anything other than peak performance, then you'll be sort of susceptible to dogma and playing defense on some sort of ideology. When it comes to firing people, at the end of the day, the behavior that is the best for the organization, performance-wise, is the one that pays. And so that is the ultimate truth that I think we're trying to get to. And I think we can look at that as, this person is incapable. They need to be removed from the situation. Check. Also, performance can be found inside of the fact that you view that as a personal responsibility to get better. So what do you have now? It's a better organization because someone's gone, and you have a better leader because that leader took on the responsibility of, hey, maybe I could have done X, Y, and Z better.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I think we're going to wrap it today. We're approaching just over 45 minutes here. So, hey, man, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Logan, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure rapping with you and getting to hear your thoughts on all this. And again, for those watching, make sure you check out Logan. You can find him at deucegym.com. Find him at Functional Coach on Instagram. Like you mentioned, prep.deucegym.com, and you'll see the coaches prep, the summit, all the info. It's all laid out there.
Yeah.
And if I can encourage you guys, if you want to become not just better in business, but just really get momentum in life, I encourage you, check out what Logan's doing. Man, you're putting out great work. Thank you so much for sharing with our audience today.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. And everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. Logan, have a great weekend, and we'll see everybody next week. Take it easy.
You too. See you.